What's going on, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Livin In Lex, the show where we talk about all things living in Lexington and Central Kentucky. As always, I'm your host, Logan Cheek. I am a local Lexington native and real estate agent in the area, so if you're thinking about making a move here or just have questions about the area in general, I'm going to leave my contact information on the screen. Please feel free to text, call, email me at any point. I love it when people from YouTube reach out, and I look forward to having a conversation with you, no matter what that may be or what questions you may have. Now, this video is an especially important topic for those of you thinking about relocating to an area, because no area is perfect when it comes to this, and that is crime. What is the crime like in Lexington, Kentucky? I'm going to talk a little bit about that. Now, a lot of what I'm going to talk about in this video has nothing to do with my opinion and solely based on the research that I have done from websites online. Now, I will interject some of my opinion here and there as always, but a lot of this research has come from data from Lexington Police, Kentucky State Police, and other local law enforcement organizations that have posted to these websites, as well as some other opinions coming from those online. Crime is probably one of the most important things when considering a move to a new area. And if you've got questions on this specifically, again, please feel free to reach out, but let's go ahead and dive on in. Now, overall crime in Lexington is actually pretty good. A lot of other natives to Kentucky that aren't necessarily from Lexington may have their own opinions of what crime looks like in Lexington. A lot of that has to do with many of the towns inside of Kentucky are very small, so anytime something big happens, or anything really at all inside of Lexington, that's big news for a lot of these towns. So if you're talking to somebody from a small town in Kentucky, keep that in mind, that the things that happen within a larger city are going to be different than that of a smaller city. Now, that also raises another good point, that if you do like the quieter life, it may be a good idea to consider one of the cities outside of Lexington if you don't like all the news highlighting the many things that are happening within Lexington all the time. Now, I want to compare Lexington to a lot of the other larger cities, as I think this is one of the better metrics on how to compare crime rates in Lexington compared to a lot of the other cities. It's important to keep in mind that a lot of this data comes from local law enforcement and should be accurate. It's important to keep in mind that crime is an extremely complex issue, and there's no one great metric or data for determining crime in a given area. It's a complex issue, and it's based on a lot of different things like population density, demographics, and law enforcement efforts. Kentucky fares pretty well compared to some of the other cities around, and I want to talk about the crime rates based on violent crime and property crime rates. So, in Lexington, Kentucky, the crime rate for every 1,000 residents here, which is probably one of the better metrics on how to measure the crime rate, is going to be about 3.1 to every 1,000 residents for a violent crime inside of Lexington. And for property crime, it's going to be about 32.3 to every 1,000 residents. Now, before you say this is extremely high, I want you to listen to some of the other closer cities around Lexington before you jump to a conclusion. So when compared to some of the other cities near Lexington within a couple of hours, we've got Louisville, Kentucky, that's 4.4 to every 1,000 residents for violent crime, and 40.1 to every 1,000 residents for property crime. Now, this is higher than Lexington. Now, when we compare that to Cincinnati, Ohio, it's 3.4 in violent crime and 34 in property crime, also higher than Lexington. When we compare it to Columbus, Ohio, another nearby city, it's 3.0 to every 1,000, which is a little lower than Lexington, and 32.4 to property crime rate, which is almost exactly what the crime rates are in Lexington. Columbus, Ohio is very close in terms of the local crime rates. And also, because Tennessee is so popular, I wanted to throw in a very popular Tennessee city, so I threw Nashville on here. It is 3.5 to every 1,000 residents for violent crime and 30.3 in property crime rates for every 1,000 residents. Violent crime being higher than it is in Lexington, and property crime being a little bit lower. I'd really love to throw up some of the metrics on the smaller towns in Kentucky, but there's not a lot of great research and data out there. The easiest way to do it is to compare it to some of the larger cities around and nearby in this area of the country, and it sits fairly close to the bottom of the pack out of the cities I just read. Lexington's safety record is relatively strong when compared to some of the other cities in Kentucky. There have been many efforts to enhance community policing, and engagement have been contributed to crime reductions in various neighborhoods. While no city is entirely crime-free, Lexington continues to make strides in creating safe and a welcoming environment for its residents. One of the key strengths that Lexington has versus a lot of other cities in the country is it is a very tight-knit community in many places. That's especially so as you go outside of Lexington, but it still holds true in Lexington as well. Southern hospitality is a real thing, and anyone that has come from a different part of the country that visits this area learns that very quickly. I have a lot of my clients from out of state mention that to me. Residents take pride in looking after one another, and many of the neighborhoods around here have neighborhood watches. A lot of the neighborhoods around here are very walkable too, and with a lot of people being out and around on the streets, that makes it a little bit more difficult for crime without being seen. Now, when it comes to crime inside of Lexington, I would highly encourage you to do research on your own. You can listen to me and what I say on crime rates, but I don't recommend only listening to me. Do your own research on this. I'm going to leave some links down below this video on some of the websites that I use. There's great tools out there that show you maps of where all the crimes happen. If you're interested in knowing about certain crimes, if you're interested in learning about a certain area and want to know more about the crime rate, these maps are great tools to learn more about this. Local law enforcement and Lexington police do a great job of updating these maps and showing where all of these crimes happen. So please take the time out if you're interested and look at these maps that I've provided to learn more about where all the specific crimes happen. As a real estate agent, it's a lot more than just making sales. I want to make sure that my clients are comfortable wherever they may end up. So do your research on these, pick some areas that you like, take some of my advice on some of these areas and some of what I know about crime and some of the best neighborhoods. Determine what's best for you and your family, and please reach out if you have any questions about anything that I've covered in this video. I'm more than happy to discuss this and provide any resources that I may have in determining on what the best decision for your family is. With that being said, I will drop my contact information down below, as I am a local Lexington native and real estate agent in the area. So please feel free to call, text, email me at any point if you have any questions about the crime in Kentucky, about certain areas in Kentucky, or if you just want some resources on some of the best places to look and learn more about what the crime is like in Kentucky and Lexington. With all that being said, thank you so much for tuning in on this video about the crime in Kentucky, and I look forward to seeing you again next time on the next episode of Livin In Lex.